Girls, I'm done. Can you hear me? I'm done. The babysitter's voice resounded through the executive ward, sharp and frustrated. Thomas Fisher stopped in front of the glass doors, his mobile maintenance card in the middle of his push. Through the transparent walls, he could see two little girls, identical, glued to the farthest corner. Stiff backs against the wall and facial expressions like porcelain masks. I don't care if your mother is the CEO of this whole building, the babysitter continued, with the phone in her hand. You've managed to get 10 babysitters to resign in 3 months. You just sit there like little ghosts. It's creepy. It's not okay. The twins didn't move. They didn't blink. They looked straight ahead as if the woman didn't exist. Thomas should have kept walking. He had 3 more floors to clean before his shift was over. But something in those 2 girls, the way they stayed so still, so carefully, as if they were trying to disappear, pressed his chest with a familiar recognition. He knew that stillness. He had lived it for 6 months after the accident. Before we continue, please tell us where in the world you tune into us. We love to see how far our stories travel. The babysitter passed by with the phone glued to her ear. Yes, Miss Sawyer, I'm calling to inform you that I resign immediately. I can't work with children who don't even try. His voice faded down the hall. Thomas looked at the twins again. 7 years, perhaps. Long brown curly hair, red dresses, now wrinkled by hours of sitting, and that terrible emptiness practiced in his eyes. The kind of emptiness that comes from learning that silence is safer than speaking. He should leave. He was just the babysitter. This was not his problem. But those girls looked exactly like how their son had looked when Dylan had decided that the world was too noisy, too painful, too difficult to face. Thomas made a decision. He pushed his car through the doors of the nursery. The heads of the twins turned slightly, watching, cautious. "Hello," Thomas said softly, keeping his distance. He didn't approach them. He just stayed close to the door, pretending to be small, not threatening. "I'm Thomas. I clean this building." I heard what he said. There was no answer, but his eyes were following him now. "She was wrong," he continued, his voice low and firm. "You are not creepy. You are not bad. You are just scared. And that's fine." The fingers of one of the twins contracted, the movement smaller. But Thomas caught it. He had learned something crucial in the years since the accident. Sometimes the noisiest communication occurs in silence. I'm not going to make them talk. I'm not going to demand anything from them. I'm just going to be here for a minute and then I'll leave, okay? There was still no answer, but their shoulders relaxed a little. Thomas slowly sat on the floor on the other side of the room, with his back to the opposite wall. He didn't look at them. He just sat there, existing in his space without being a threat. 5 minutes passed. The only sound was the silent buzzing of the air conditioning of the building. Then Thomas got up, assigned the girls once, and left. When the door behind him closed, he heard it. The softest sigh. As if they had been holding their breath and finally felt safe enough to let her go. Thomas pushed his car through the corridor, his mind already working. Tomorrow he would come back and bring something with him, something small, something soft, something that would say, "You are not alone." That night, in his small apartment, on the other side of the city, Thomas sat on his workbench in the corner of the room. Wooden pieces spread over the surface, while his carving knife shaped a small piece of maple wood. "Dad!" Thomas looked up. His 7-year-old son, Dylan, was standing at the door, in his dinosaur pajamas, rubbing his eyes. Thomas's hands moved with the fluid gestures of the American Sign Language. "You can't sleep, little friend." Dylan nodded and approached, dragging his feet to the workbench. He looked at the half-cut object, in Thomas's hands. "What are you doing?" "A fish for two girls who need something to hold on to." Dylan bowed his head, curious. "Like my fish?" Thomas looked at the small shelf on the workbench, where Dylan's fish was. The first thing Thomas had carved 4 years ago, when his son had stopped communicating after the accident. When his son had withdrawn so deeply into himself that Thomas thought he would never reach him again. "Just like your fish." Thomas made the sign. Dylan went up to the stool next to his father and watched him work. The scraping of the knife against the wood filled the comfortable silence between them. "Are you scared?" Dylan asked with signs after a moment. "Yes, very scared, as I was." Thomas left his knife and looked at his son, this brave and beautiful boy who had lost his hearing, lost his mother, lost his whole world in a terrible moment, and somehow had found his way back, just like you were. Thomas made the sign. "But they will be fine, just like you." Dylan took it seriously. Then he made the sign. "You should give them the fish tomorrow. He helped me. That's the plan." They sat together in the quiet apartment, father and son, carving hope in the wood. The next night, Thomas returned to the center of the nursery. The twins were in the exact same place, with their backs to the wall, with their knees collected, their faces carefully expressionless. A different nanny was sitting on the other side of the room, checking her phone with the resigned expression of someone who had already given up. Thomas gently tapped the frame of the door. I need to check the ventilation on the girls." "Maintenance request." The nanny barely raised her eyes. "Whatever." Thomas pushed his cart inside and placed his small hand ladder near where the twins were sitting. He did not look at them directly. He simply moved, with deliberate and unhurried movements, checking the ventilation, which did not really need to be checked. After a few minutes, he came down. From his pocket, he took out the woodfish, as soft as silk, the perfect size for the palm of the hand, with each rounded and soft edge. He had spent 3 hours sanding it the night before, until his fingers ached, until he felt solidly comforted. Thomas crouched a few feet from the girls and placed the fish on the floor between them. Then he got up, picked up his tools, and left without saying a word. He did not look back, but when the door closed, he heard the softest whisper of movement. A small hand looking for something soft in a world that had been too hostile for too long. Day 2. Thomas brought a carved wood bird. Day 3, a star. Day 4, a heart. He came back every night. Every night he worked in silence near the twins. He gave them a new carving and left without asking for anything in return. The nannies roared, different faces, the same disinterest. But the twins noticed Thomas. Their eyes now followed him, waiting, observing. For day 4, both girls squeezed their collection of carvings. Their fingers traced the smooth surfaces over and over again. Thomas recognized the gesture. Dylan did the same when anxiety infiltrated. That repetitive movement, that need for something solid and safe. On day 5, Thomas made a decision. When he entered the nursery, the twins were watching him. Really watching him, their heads turned as he approached. Thomas took out a wooden butterfly and knelt. Instead of simply placing it on the floor, he held it in the palm of his hand, and then made the sign. For you, both girls were completely still. Their eyes fixed on their hands in motion with a laser focus. Thomas made the sign again, slowly and carefully. "My name is Thomas. I won't hurt you. You don't have to talk." The mouth of one of the twins opened slightly. The surprise crossed his face, carefully and inexpressively. He placed the carved wooden butterfly and went to his usual place against the opposite wall. But instead of working, he simply sat down. He simply existed in his space, patient and present. 10 minutes of silence. Then Thomas got up, said goodbye with his hand and left. Day 6. Thomas brought a carved moon. This time, when he sat down, he told them a story with signs. His hands painted images in the air. A story about a moon that watched over all the children in the world, especially those who were scared, especially those who had forgotten how to speak. The moon never demands anything. Thomas made the sign. It simply shines in silence in the darkness, letting everyone know that they are not alone. The twins observed each movement, hypnotized. When he finished, Thomas placed the moon on the ground and left. Day 7. When Thomas entered the nursery, his breath was cut. The twins had arranged the 6 wooden objects: fish, bird, star, heart, butterfly, moon, in a perfect circle on the ground in front of them. A pattern, an offering, an answer. Thomas's eyes were stung. He sat down in his usual place and took out the 7th size, a wooden owl. This one is wise, sees everything, but does not judge anything. He placed it on the ground, and then one of the twins moved slowly. Shaky, he raised his little hands. His fingers formed careful and uncertain shapes. Thank you. Thomas kept his face calm, even while emotions invaded him. He answered with signs. You're welcome. What is your name? The girl's hands moved again, spelling out every letter. Skylar. Her sister watched. Then, gathering courage, she also raised her hands. Nova. Beautiful names, Thomas signed. Nice to meet you. Skylar and Nova sat in silence for a moment. Then Skylar signed. Why do you talk with your hands? My son cannot hear, so we talk like this. Do you like talking this way? Both girls nodded. Nova's hands moved. People don't force us to use our mouths when we talk like this. Understanding washed over Thomas. Everyone wanted them to speak, to use their voices, to be normal. But sign language allowed them to communicate without that pressure. It was a language of silence. And silence was where they felt safe. You never have to use your mouths with me, Thomas signed. Your hands say everything perfectly. Skylar's fingers moved hesitantly. Our therapist taught us how to sign. After we stopped talking, she said maybe we could talk like this instead. That was a good therapist. This is a real language, just as good as speaking. For the first time, something changed in their faces. It wasn't exactly a smile, but it was close. Relief, recognition, hope. After that 7th day, Thomas came every afternoon. The twins now communicated with him freely, with hesitation at first, then with growing confidence. They told him stories through their hands, asked questions, shared small fragments of their world. 3 weeks later, Skylar made a sign that made Thomas's chest ache. Our dad used to yell a lot. He got angry when we didn't behave well, when we were too loud or too quiet or too anything. One day, he left and never came back. Nova added, we decided together to stop talking. Words only made people angry. Thomas signed carefully. Not all words make people angry, and silence is okay too. You choose how to communicate. Always. Why are you nice to us? Skylar asked. Thomas thought of Dylan, of Claire, of the accident that had shattered their lives 4 years ago. A stupid argument over groceries while she was driving, another car swerving into their lane, the terrible sound of impact. Claire was gone instantly. Dylan lost his hearing when his head hit the window. He thought of the 6 months Dylan had stopped communicating afterward. The guilt that still whispered in Thomas's mind. You distracted her. You could have been quiet. You could have been driving. He thought of leaving his job as a nurse because he could no longer face so much life. Of becoming invisible as a janitor because invisibility felt safer than being seen. Because I know what it's like to be scared, and I know what it's like when someone sees you anyway. One afternoon, Thomas brought Dylan with him. The twins' eyes widened when they saw another child enter the nursery. Dylan waved shyly and communicated with signs. "Hi, I'm Dylan. I'm 7 years old. My dad says you talk with your hands too." Skylar and Nova looked at each other, communicating in that mysterious twin language. Then Skylar answered with signs. "We're 7 too. Your dad is nice." "I know." Dylan signed. "He carved this for me. He took his own wooden fish out of his pocket. When I'm scared, I hold it. It helps." Nova's eyes filled with tears. She held her wooden fish, the first one Thomas had given them. "It helps us too." The 3 children sat together, comparing their wooden treasures, telling each other stories with signs, laughing in complete silence. It was the most beautiful thing Thomas had seen since the accident. That was when Vanessa Sawyer walked in. She had left a meeting early, frustrated by another babysitter resigning. 12 months of this. 12 months since her daughters had spoken a single word. 12 months of failed therapies, defeated specialists, and a silence so complete she felt like her daughters had disappeared. She opened the nursery door, expecting to find her daughters in their usual corner, withdrawn and unreachable. Instead, she found them sitting with the janitor and a small boy, the 4 of them communicating with signs. The twins' faces lit up with something she hadn't seen in over a year. Joy. "What?" Vanessa's voice came out as a whisper. The 4 looked up. The twins froze immediately. Their smiles faded, but they didn't back away. They stayed close to Thomas, Nova's hand clutching his sleeve. The man stood up quickly, respectfully. "I'm sorry, Miss Sawyer. I'm Thomas, maintenance. They are signing." Vanessa's voice broke. "They are actually communicating with you." "How? How did you do this?" "I didn't do anything special," Thomas said quietly. "I just sat with them. I didn't make them talk. My son is deaf, so we use sign language." The girls felt comfortable with it. Vanessa looked at her daughters, really looked at them. They were holding small wooden objects. Their faces were no longer expressionless. They were present, engaged, looking at this janitor with something in their eyes that made Vanessa want to cry. "Trust. How long?" she asked. Her voice was trembling. "About 5 weeks. I started leaving them wood carvings. Eventually, they felt comfortable enough to communicate with me with signs. 5 weeks. Vanessa had passed by this nursery dozens of times. How had she not known? And they talk to you like that. Full conversations. They are brilliant," Thomas said simply. "They just needed someone to listen to them without demanding that they speak." Skylar signed to Nova. Nova nodded. Then Skylar slowly signed to her mother. "He is nice. He doesn't force us to move our mouths. He gives us things to hold." She held up the wooden fish. Vanessa's hand flew to her mouth. She answered with signs. Her fingers were trembling. "I'm so glad, honey." Both girls seemed surprised that their mother knew sign language. Vanessa had been learning for months, practicing alone, desperately hoping for a chance to use it. "Mr. Fisher," Vanessa said, and there was something raw in her voice. "Would you be willing to keep spending time with them? Please, I know this is unusual, but you have achieved something in 5 weeks that no one else could achieve in a year. I will compensate you." "No," Thomas said firmly. Then more softly, "I mean, without payment. If it helps them, I'll do it, but not for money." "Why?" Vanessa asked. Thomas thought of Dylan, of the people who treated his son differently after the accident, the teachers who spoke too slowly, the parents who pulled their children away, the strangers who looked at him like he was broken. Because everyone deserves someone who sees them. Not their diagnosis, not their trauma, just them. A lump formed in Vanessa's throat. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing my daughters." It became routine. Every afternoon, Thomas spent time with the twins. Dylan joined them often. The three children formed their own world, a world where sign language was normal, where silence was respected, where wooden carvings were passed around like treasures. Vanessa began to join them too. She sat in silence, learning to be still, learning to listen with her eyes instead of her ears, learning to stop trying to fix her daughters and just be with them. One afternoon, after the children fell asleep on the nursery rugs, the three huddled together like puppies. Vanessa and Thomas sat by the window, talking in low voices. "I don't know how to thank you," Vanessa said. "You've given me back my daughters. They never left. They were just waiting. Still, you didn't have to do any of this." Thomas was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and honest. "After my wife died, people kept telling me to get over it. As if grief was something I could just decide to stop feeling." He looked at the sleeping children. "But you can't get over love. You just carry it differently." "What happened?" Vanessa asked softly, and Thomas told her about the accident, about the argument in the car, something stupid about forgetting the groceries that ended with the screech of tires and broken glass, about Claire dying on impact, about Dylan surviving but losing his hearing, about the guilt that whispered in every moment of silence. "You distracted her. You could have been quiet. You could have been driving." He thought about leaving his job as a nurse because he could no longer face so much life, about becoming invisible because invisibility felt safer. "Helping Skylar and Nova," Thomas said softly. "It's not about getting over it. It's about using what I learned from my own pain to ease someone else's. Otherwise, what was it all for?" Vanessa reached out and took his hand. "You are a good man, Thomas Fisher." He looked at their joined hands, then at her face. "You are quite remarkable yourself." The moment stretched between them, charged, uncertain, full of possibilities. "I should go," Thomas said, but he didn't move. "You should." Vanessa nodded, but her hand squeezed his. And then somehow they leaned toward each other, and Thomas's hand caressed her face, and their lips met in a kiss that was soft, tentative, and painfully hopeful. When they pulled apart, Vanessa whispered, "I haven't felt this in so long." "Me neither," Thomas admitted. "We should go slow," Vanessa said, "for the kids." "Coffee?" Thomas suggested. "A real date somewhere that isn't this nursery." Vanessa laughed softly. "Coffee sounds perfect." They started with coffee dates, long conversations in small cafes, where Thomas was just Thomas, and Vanessa was just Vanessa. No titles, no roles, just two broken people learning to trust again. Their second date was a lunch in a park. The children played nearby, running on the grass, communicating with signs, laughing. Thomas and Vanessa sat on a bench, shoulders brushing, watching their children be children. "They are good for each other," Vanessa said. "They are." The third date, Thomas suggested an art painting class for kids. He said Dylan loves it, it's visual, so he doesn't feel left out. I thought Skylar and Nova might enjoy it too. Another way to express themselves. So one Saturday, they all went together. 3 children and 2 parents, who were perhaps becoming something more. Dylan painted bold, abstract shapes. Skylar created intricate geometric patterns. Nova painted a tower that stretched from the bottom to the top of her canvas, precarious and beautiful. Thomas and Vanessa painted too. Their easels side by side, their hands brushing with touches that didn't seem accidental. "You are terrible at painting," Vanessa teased. "I'm a carver, not a painter," Thomas protested. They laughed, and it felt so normal, so light, so different from the grief both had carried. Months passed. Coffee dates turned into dinners. Art classes became weekly traditions. Weekend outings to museums, parks, and bookstores, where the children explored, and Thomas and Vanessa built something real. They went slow, but they were also falling in love. One evening on Vanessa's balcony, after the children fell asleep, Thomas said quietly, "It feels wrong to be happy again. Sometimes I feel guilty." "It's not wrong," Vanessa interrupted gently. "Claire would want you to be happy. Love after loss is possible. It doesn't diminish what came before." Thomas fell silent. "My therapist said something similar, that we are capable of holding more than one truth at a time." "Exactly." Vanessa took his hand. "You loved Claire. You loved Dylan. And maybe you're starting to love us too." Thomas looked at her and nodded. "Yes, I think so. I'm falling for you too," Vanessa admitted. "You and Dylan, you've become so important to us." They kissed on the balcony, while the city lights shone below, and it felt like a promise. 6 months. After that first wooden fish, Thomas took everyone to the garden, where the twins loved feeding the birds. It was a cold morning. Everyone was wearing warm coats. Thomas had brought hot chocolate that the children passed around, their breath creating little clouds in the air. Nova was building a tower of small stones. Skylar placed acorns in a spiral pattern. Dylan signed to Thomas about a bird he had seen. And then, in a low voice, Nova said, "The tower is missing one more stone." Her voice was small, rusty from disuse. But it was there. Everyone froze. Nova looked up, surprised by her own voice. Skylar looked at her sister with wide eyes. Thomas signed gently. "You spoke. That was beautiful." Nova's eyes filled with tears. She signed, "I didn't mean to." "It's okay," Vanessa said softly, kneeling beside her. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to. But your voice is beautiful, honey. We've missed it." Skylar touched her sister's hand, then carefully whispered, "I miss talking sometimes too." Vanessa hugged both girls with tears running down her face. "No pressure. You talk when you're ready, or you don't talk at all. We love you exactly as you are." But something had changed. The first words had come naturally, not forced, not demanded, but offered freely when they finally felt safe enough. Dylan signed to his father. They found their voices. Thomas signed back. They always had them. They just needed time. The words came slowly after that. Not every day, not even every week. But gradually, Skylar and Nova began to mix spoken words with sign language, choosing how to communicate based on comfort rather than expectation. At first, they spoke more to Thomas and Dylan than to anyone else. Thomas never made a big deal of it, simply accepting whatever form their communication took. Vanessa watched her daughters bloom. Sometimes they would start humming soft, tentative tunes that grew louder. They asked questions, told stories, laughed out loud, and through it all, Thomas and Vanessa's relationship deepened. Family dinners, sleepovers, where the 3 kids camped in blanket forts, conversations about the future, about what it might be like if they truly joined their lives. "I want this to be real," Vanessa said one night on her couch, with the children asleep in the next room. "I want you in my life, Thomas, permanently." "I want that too," Thomas admitted. "But I worry about Dylan, about the adjustment." "You are an amazing father," Vanessa said, firmly. "Dylan thrives, he's happy. He has friends now, he has you, that's everything." Thomas pulled her close. "Then let's do it. Let's do it for real." "Are you asking me to marry you?" Vanessa teased. "Not yet," Thomas said with a smile. but soon. 12 months after that first wooden fish, Thomas knew the time was right. He had spent weeks carving a special set, a family of 5 figures holding hands, so smooth and perfect they felt like love made tangible. He took everyone to the garden, where the twins had spoken again for the first time. It was early spring. The trees were blooming, the birds were singing. The morning sun bathed everything in golden light. Thomas gathered everyone together. Then, smiling nervously, he knelt on the grass, while Skylar, Nova, and Dylan stood nearby, each holding a hand-painted sign. "Will you marry us?" The hands of Vanessa flew to her mouth. She looked at Thomas, at the children, at the signs they held with such hope. "All of you?" she asked. Her voice broke. "All of us," Thomas confirmed. "We want to be a real family, if you'll have us." Tears ran down Vanessa's face. "Yes, yes to all of you. Yes, yes, yes." The children ran forward, hugging their parents in a tangle of laughter and love. Skylar spoke clearly. "We're going to be a real family now," Nova added. "With a dad who listens," Dylan signed, "and sisters who understand me." Thomas took out the wood carving, the family of 5 figures, and placed it in Vanessa's hands. "For you, for us, something to hold on to." Vanessa pressed it against her chest, feeling its softness, its warmth, its weight. "It's perfect. You are all perfect." The wedding was held 6 months later, in that same garden, under a canopy of autumn leaves. Skylar and Nova wore matching flower crowns and carried signs in both English and ASL. "Today we become family." Dylan signed Thomas's vows, his small hands careful and precise. Vanessa repeated them, her voice steady and sure. The twins spoke their own vows, short and simple. "We promise to be brave together." When they exchanged rings, the 3 children ran forward, hugging their parents in a tangle of laughter and love. That afternoon, in their new shared home, a house with a garden and a detailed workshop, the family gathered in the living room. Skylar and Nova sat at the piano in the corner, playing a duet they had been practicing. Their voices joined the music, still hesitant at times, but growing stronger. They sang a song about finding a home, about being safe, about a love that wraps around you when you feel too small. Dylan sat beside them, feeling the vibrations of the piano through his hands, his face beaming with joy. Thomas and Vanessa stood by the window, holding each other, watching their children, their family, fill the house with music and laughter. "We did it," Vanessa whispered. "We built something beautiful out of broken pieces." "We did it," Thomas agreed. "Together." On the mantelpiece stood the wooden carving of 5 figures holding hands, smooth, perfect, and unbreakable. Next to it, the first wooden fish Thomas had carved. The one that started it all. Small objects that said you are not alone. Someone made this thinking of you. Someone carved away all the rough edges so it wouldn't hurt to hold. 2 broken families had become one and whole. Skylar and Nova found their voices again, speaking more every day, singing when they felt like it, letting the world back in slowly on their own terms. They learned that silence was okay, that sign language was as valid as speech, that they could choose how to communicate. Dylan found sisters who learned to communicate fluently in sign language, who included him in everything, who never treated him like he was different or less. He found a second mother who learned his language and loved him fiercely. Vanessa found a partner who understood that strength sometimes looks like vulnerability, that healing is not linear, that love after loss is possible. She found peace knowing her daughters were truly okay, not fixed or changed, but accepted and loved exactly as they were. And Thomas found forgiveness not just from Vanessa or the children, but from himself. The guilt would always be there, a silent companion, but it was no longer the only thing he carried. He also carried love, hope, purpose, family. He had learned what he tried to show the twins all those months ago, that everyone deserves to be seen, not their diagnosis, nor their trauma, nor their problems. Just them, whole, worthy, deserving of tenderness, including himself. Sometimes healing doesn't come from words, therapy, or grand gestures. Sometimes it comes from something small and soft that fits in your palm and reminds you that you deserve softness, you deserve patience, you deserve something carved with care just for you. Sometimes it comes from someone who sees your silence not as something to fix, but as something to honor. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If this story reminded you that healing is possible, that broken pieces can build something beautiful, that everyone deserves to be seen, please subscribe to Soul Lift Stories. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, what is a small gesture that changed your life? Your story matters. See you.